Hello and welcome to APAC Games Weekly episode 52. This is me, Connell Suter, as always, and on APAC Games Weekly we take you through the biggest headlines of the past week from across the APAC Games industries. This week we're focused really on Japan, with most of the week's major headlines coming from within the country. We'll be covering Nintendo being the richest company in Japan, reports of delays to the Switch 2, Sega's new Sapporo studio, I say new, we'll talk more about that later on, and more. So, without any further ado, let's get stuck in. Nintendo is now the richest company in Japan. So, some interesting news from Japan brought to us via the Toyo Keizai Economics magazine, who are based in Tokyo. They've released some new data that suggests that Nintendo is now the richest company in Japan, with a cash and cash equivalent value of around 11.44 billion USD. That's obviously converted from the original yen. The extra detail that makes this really interesting is thinking about that 11.44 billion USD. Obviously, it's a huge amount of money to us, but there are plenty of companies far bigger than that. The difference that Nintendo has is that, according to this data, they have debts of 0. I'm sure that's something companies around the world would kill to be able to say. Nintendo weren't the only game company included though. Bandai Namco took the 25th spot, Square Enix at 38, Konami at 50, Sega at 63, and a few more followed. An interesting note to this is the quite obvious lack of Sony on the list. However, the report suggests that this is likely due to a debt value. Their debt value as of September 23 supposedly totaled 31.33 billion USD. So those debts being almost 3 times the value of the most profitable company. Quite mad. Overall, this is a story that doesn't really have much carry-on impact, but it is very interesting to think that A, Nintendo are richer than every Japanese car and tech manufacturer, which is unbelievable to think about. To think now that in some ways Nintendo is a more recognizable name worldwide than Hyundai or Suzuki is just crazy to think about. And B, that the top company in terms of value in any country is a games company. I think that really says not just about how lucrative the games industry is, but how far it's came in the last 10-20 years. Absolutely incredible. Nintendo reportedly telling game publishers that the Switch 2 will be delayed. So from good news to not so good news, unfortunately. It's being reported that Nintendo have been warning publishers that the Switch 2 will be delayed until Q1 2025. If true, this does suggest that they were indeed aiming to schedule the release for late 2024, very likely Q4, as some have actually been saying over the past few months. Those claiming to have heard these rumours, though, are, as you'd imagine, universally asking to not be named, probably as Nintendo has a bit of a history of blacklisting companies and individuals in these situations, kind of understandably. Nintendo has, as you'd imagine, refused to respond to comments, at least from the North American division, who was asked, from various publications, but there is something about the reporting of this that does feel like it's probably legitimate and not just someone churning the rumour mill. The fact that they refused to comment, or certainly didn't respond to any requests to comment, I think does suggest that there probably is a bit of credence to this, which is both annoying, upsetting, but also kind of cool that we now have an idea of when the Switch 2 will come out, so swings and roundabouts. It's a strange situation, as we're essentially hearing of a delay for a release date that we never officially knew about. On top of that, it's weird because this isn't a game being delayed by a few months, it's an entire system. How much could they achieve in a single quarter delay? Now, my theory, perhaps, slightly informed by the difficult releases of the PS5 and less so but still existing the issues with the Xbox Series XS release, Nintendo could be building a longer manufacturing period in, ensuring that they don't have any immediate console shortages. even looking in the history of Nintendo, it has been a problem they've had on numerous releases. On occasion, there's even been a suggestion that it was done intentionally, but it's certainly a shame when it does happen and people don't like it. While it obviously can show how excited people are for your console, it's Nintendo, it's the Switch 2, you don't need to kind of grab more attention than you already have, because they will have all the attention. I think it's the only platform that people will actually be excited to hear about. But certainly, who knows? While the delay is a shame, we can hope that this is in some way going to provide us with a more stable and consistent amount of consoles on release. And hey, we're only a year away from the Switch 2, I guess. That's cool. Let's be happy about that. Sega developers say new Sapporo studio has led to better lives. So this story in and of itself isn't super interesting, but when you think of it in the global industry sense, I think it does become very intriguing when you consider all the things that have gone on 2024 already and in 2023 in Western markets. Japan has generally managed to avoid any notable redundancies, very different to what we've seen in Western markets, and have even actually been increasing pay for many Japanese-based employees at major companies. We reported on a couple of those last year. Sega opened their Sapporo studio, which was their first outside of Tokyo, in December 2021, right as the industry was reaching its COVID lockdown-induced peaks. Many studios that expanded teams at that time have, unfortunately since then, gone on to reduce team sizes, and even those that didn't expand during the pandemic have had to reduce their team sizes too, at least at major companies. What's interesting is that Sega's Sapporo studio is still going very strong in 2024, with the company investing more into the studio to entrench their future in the industry. In an interview with Sapporo studio president Takaya Segawa, he said the studio provides a far greater quality of life than their counterparts in Tokyo have due to Sapporo's beautiful countryside surrounding the city and its leading universities, guaranteeing they've always got people excited to be working in the industry. I won't go through the entire interview, as it does boil down to almost being a review of why Sapporo is a nice place to live, which I'm sure it is, but it is really interesting to see how positive the Japanese industry seems to be doing and how they talk about their offices, their business, compared to those in North America and Europe, who have faced redundancies and a generally just kind of crappy situation so far in 2024, and as I say, even throughout 2023. It's really, honestly, just nice to read and hear a positive games employment story in 2024, and let's hope that it isn't just going to be stuck in Japan and we all get a bit of good news as the year goes on. Fingers crossed. Mother 3 is coming to Switch, but only in Japan. So, the Mother or Earthbound series, as you might know it, have had a very long and strange history of leaving Japan. Mother 1 and 2 did eventually come to the West, under different names of course, but that was after much pleading and begging from fans. Despite that, and the huge following that Earthbound has worldwide. I mean, I'm always shocked by how much people love this game. I've never played them, my girlfriend has, she absolutely loves them, and everyone I know that has played them talks about how incredible they are. Which makes it all the weirder that Mother 3 has never been officially translated or released anywhere outside of Japan. It's very much one of those weird Japanese industry situations where it seems that no one there has confidence that the game would do well outside of Japan, despite players around the world saying, yes it will, please let me buy this. It reminds me of some of the issues that the Yakuza games have faced with even just removing certain features, saying that they're too unique to Japanese culture and global players wouldn't get it, but a global player playing Yakuza probably has a fair amount of interest in Japan. I say Yakuza, obviously, Like a Dragon now, or however they've renamed it. But back to Mother 3, we're in the same situation as we were in the past. It's now getting an official Switch Online release, but only in Japan. The announcement did come with games being announced for Western markets, but they were all Rare titles, which were of course developed in the UK. And as you'd imagine, fans are again pleading for an official translation of Mother 3 and feeling unheard. You remember, by the way, those rare titles are the ones that Nintendo has had to build a special app on Switch in Japan for players to be able to play because they have like adult-only ratings, despite absolutely not being adult games. Very, very weird. But anyway, this same situation with Mother 3 actually already happened in 2015 when it got released on the Wii U Virtual Console, but only in Japan. In 2022, Reggie Fils-Aime, who of course was the former president of Nintendo America, said that localizing the GBA game, quote, just didn't make business sense, unquote. I'm not really sure what that means. People want to buy it, surely they would pay for it. It's possible that the players, while being extremely vocal, are actually a pretty small number of people. But if that's true, it's pretty bizarre that we're talking about this so many years later and fans old and new are still asking for the same thing. Also, from working in localization and game services, I'm not sure why it would be so difficult to translate the game, or really particularly expensive, especially considering the amount of players who will be shouting from the rooftops that it's finally being released. I'm sure you'll get a lot of people even interested in the previous 2 games in the series. Very, very strange. It's very likely there is a whole story there that we just don't know about. It could be a strange situation like we saw with Red Dead Redemption never coming to PC because of the way it had been built and things like this. Who knows? All we can say is hopefully fans worldwide and my girlfriend do finally get to play Mother 3 in English without having to emulate it. Fingers crossed, but really, I'm not holding out hope. And for a final very quick story, Valorant Champions 2024 to be held in Seoul, South Korea. So, as the headline says, Valorant's 2024 Champions Tournament will be held in South Korea. This might sound like business as usual, but it's actually the first time that the event will be held in the APAC region at all. It's really interesting. Previously, it's only been held in North America and Europe. It's one of those where hearing about an esports competition being held in Korea makes you go, sure, it's everywhere, every year, right? They're always doing this. And you're like, actually, when you're looking at this more, it's never been there. It's quite an interesting one. This is, of course, just another fantastic sign for the Korean esports industry, and one that they probably wanted, considering the odd situation we discussed a couple of episodes ago about Korean esports streams being dropped in China due to a single team controversy. But hey, Valorant players and South Korean gamers, it's fantastic news for them, and hey, if you want to go into the tournament, now you get to go to Seoul as well. What a great place. And that was us for APAC Games Weekly episode 52. As always, thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the stories and that the possible Switch 2 delay isn't too sad a news to hear on your Monday morning. As I said though, hey, we're only a year away from a new Switch. That's amazing news. We should be super excited about that. I know I am. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, Monday, 12 p.m. GMT on YouTube and Spotify. But until then, I hope you have a fantastic week.